They are now calling for the release of Derek Chauvin and pressuring Trump to pardon him as well. Ben Shapiro leading the charge. Here it is.
If we are issuing pardons, however, there is one person that President Trump should pardon from federal charges forthwith. It would be incredibly controversial, but I think that it's absolutely necessary. That person is Derek Chauvin. President Trump should, in fact, pardon Derek Chauvin. But when it came to BLM, the inciting event for the BLM riots that caused $2 billion in property damage in the United States and set America's race relations on their worst footing in my lifetime, was, in fact, the railroading of Derek Chauvin in the death of George Floyd. The evidence demonstrates that Derek Chauvin did not, in fact, commit murder of George Floyd. George Floyd was high on fentanyl. He had a significant pre-existing heart condition. Talk about delivering pardons. President Trump, I think, should really seriously consider pardoning on federal charges. He can't pardon on state charges Derek Chauvin, who was convicted of the murder of George Floyd. As I say, we will be covering this pretty extensively in the coming weeks. Right now, you should go to pardonderek.com and sign our petition asking President Trump to grant justice to Officer Derek Chauvin.
What is this about? Put it up full mass. Elon Musk is also down with this insane party. MAGA trolls, right-wing influencers spark outrage after demanding Trump pardon Derek Chauvin in George Floyd's death despite state conviction. They're doubling down. Now keep that picture up. We are headed into the Great Depression again. Tariffs 25%. Mexico, Canada. We are on an island, even though we live in a globalized context. Donald Trump, within 2 months, has proven to be the absolute worst president and one of the worst human beings you will ever meet. In the midst of that, Shapiro decides it's a good opportunity to launch a campaign in order to free Derek Chauvin. Why? You see, it's already working. MAGA is already behind it. It's a distraction. It's a distraction from the fact that your taxes just got raised by $2,000 plus every year. It's a distraction that you cannot afford health care and you just got fired from your job, or somebody in your family or veteran has lost their income. It's a distraction. It's red meat, ladies and gentlemen. It's ceremonial at best because Derek Chauvin is convicted by the state and by the federal government, which means a pardon from the feds does absolutely nothing to free him. But they lose that in the context of their propaganda, and many MAGA fans don't know the difference. So Ben Shapiro leading the movement to pardon Chauvin. Interesting, on Tuesday, his crusade welcomed another ally, very powerful one. Elon Musk announced his support for Shapiro's campaign. Quote, something to think about, he said on X. Now, I want you to know, obviously, this was planned. It's not as if it was abrupt. He knew what was going to happen, and Elon was going to respond. The Daily Wire has now launched this petition. The petition features part of this statement. Dear President Trump, we write to urge you to immediately issue a pardon for Officer Derek Chauvin. He's not even post-certified anymore, who was unjustly convicted and is currently serving a 22.5-year sentence for the murder of George Floyd and associated federal charges. As you know, this was the inciting event for the BLM riots that caused $2 billion in property damage in cities across the United States and set America's race relations on their worst footing in recent memory. Yet the evidence demonstrates that Derek Chauvin did not murder George Floyd. All of these are lies, by the way. George Floyd was high on fentanyl. He had a significant pre-existing heart condition. He was saying he could not breathe before he was even out of the car. Derek Chauvin, for large segments of the widely circulated video of the encounter, had his knee on George Floyd's shoulder or back, not on his neck. Man, they tried this during the trial, remember? But the Constitution requires evidence in court. Jury of his peers judged him. He was able to face his accusers. All of his rights remained intact. Why is it that they have lost faith in the criminal justice system? It's interesting to note all of the arguments obviously do not pass any legal muster at all. Pre-existing conditions, that doesn't negate you from criminal acts. All right, a reminder, former Minneapolis police, the cop was found guilty of all three charges: second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. He was later found guilty of 2 federal counts of violating Floyd's civil rights. Cop convictions are rare in a system where officers routinely face little to no consequences for civilian killings. At the time of the Chauvin trial, only 7 police officers had been convicted of murder for police shootings since 2005. The law favors police and gives them great latitude to use force. The prosecution also called nearly a dozen police officers who testified that Chauvin's use of force was excessive and unnecessary. The police chief, Arredondo, called it, quote, murder, saying Chauvin ignored de-escalation and conflict resolution tactics mandated by the department. It's called an SO, standing order. Shapiro, in a separate video describing his petition, noted that Trump cannot pardon Chauvin in the state murder case, but still said it was important Chauvin be pardoned on federal charges. Chauvin's anticipated release date, December 10th, 2035. He's currently incarcerated in Arizona federal pen. Well, let me first ask, where are the Black Trump supporters? Why haven't you returned our calls or emails? You gave us all of this promotion and bravado about Trump being one of the greatest presidents ever. But I recall, Black Republican, you and I were on the same side during that case. Are you still on our side? I got a question. All right, dear brother, thoughts here.
Well, as not a Black Republican, I'm going to respond here. But I think that the notion that this set race relations back for 200 years, or whatever the actual quote was, because I don't pay particularly close attention to everything that Ben Shapiro says, is such a specious way of spinning it. Race relations were set back for 9 minutes and 24 seconds while George Floyd was laying down on the street. And I would say that what happened afterwards pushed race relations forward, because you had people of every color and creed and sexuality and financial status behind calling for the conviction of Derek Chauvin, the bringing justice to these police officers, and supporting a community that has been wronged by the police for a long time. So I see it differently. You'll be shocked to know than Ben Shapiro does. I also see what you said, Dr. Richey, a little bit differently, but not really, because I think when you say it's a distraction, I think everything that's going on is a distraction. If you are flooding the zone in the way that this administration is doing, every day something new. Every day there is somebody being cut, somebody being fired, a department being closed, funding being withdrawn, people within their sphere calling for pardons for some of the worst people we have seen in America. And some of the actions that were taken on January 6th, in direct contrast to what Ben Shapiro is saying here. I mean, if he wants Derek Chauvin pardoned and he's so outraged by what happened in the wake of George Floyd's murder, then what about what happened on Capitol Hill? I mean, so there's always a double standard with these people. But yeah, I think it's flooding the zone. I think it is distraction. I think it is, trying to appeal to some of the lowest denominator that got them there in the first place.
And here's the element that lacks intellectual integrity. Chauvin was not the only cop convicted. So if your argument had integrity, you would be calling for the release of every officer who was convicted for aiding and abetting Chauvin in the first place. But that would mean you are backing a man of color, because there was a black individual who was also convicted. It's interesting. Bring you updates as they come.